I want to thank Undersecretary Feltman for joining us today on behalf of the UN Secretariat. So it would be a complete understatement to say that we meet at a challenging time. Extremist violence is a major contributor to the suffering that we see radiating not just out of Syria, but elsewhere in the world, and particularly in the Middle East. And it places an enormous burden on frontline states, sends millions of desperate people in search of a safe haven. Daesh is the primary source of outrage, or ISIL as we know it here. But there are others: Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, Lashkar-e-Taiba, just to name a few. So let me just say a quick word about these people and particularly ISIL. They are destroyers. They don't offer to build anything. And there's no negotiating with people who intend to dictate to you that you have to live exactly as they want to, contrary to every principle of universal values that we have accepted in the norms ever since World War II and tried to operate by. Daesh institutes rape, not just as an instrument of war, but as a way of life, empowering young people to abuse women in the most god-awful ways, to create sex slaves. It lines up people on their knees in a desert or on a beach and shoots them in the back of their head or cuts off their heads. It burns an airman, a pilot from Jordan, alive. It does the most grotesque things, and it destroys culture and history. And we all saw what happened in Palmyra. So it is going to require all of us to step up and do more, because the world is looking at this and wondering whether the institutions that have been created for so long to deal with these kinds of issues are going to come together and function. There is no place for indifference at this moment for any nation that is signed up to rule of law and to global responsibilities. So that's the climate within which we meet. And this week is a critical week for all of us to come together and find a way to restore people's confidence that the international community will step up and do what's necessary. We can't just keep donating to take care of refugees. We have to prevent the refugees from having to be refugees, from having to, leave their homes and leave behind even children. I was in Germany the other day. I met with a group of Syrian refugees. One woman left with one of her children, but left two of her children with the grandparents because she couldn't take them all out to find safety. So this is what we're facing. And as we come together today, we are beginning to act. We are acting militarily and diplomatically and financially through legal reforms and through education. But we obviously have to tap into every available channel of pushback. And one of those is the initiative that President Obama hosted last year when we had a summit for world leaders on countering violent extremism. Because this is, not something where there's only one way that's going to solve it. It's got to be solved on multiple layers and multiple channels. And one of them is prevent people from being attracted to this in the first place. In 2 days, our leaders are all going to meet again here in New York to consider the next steps. And this Global Counterterrorism Forum provides an opportunity for us as the ministers to serve up to them the best ideas and the best energy and coordination possible, so we have a valuable platform for mobilizing resources and identifying the best practices in order to defend our citizens everywhere. It helps to support the UN's Global Counterterrorism Strategy, and it has helped to inspire the creation of the Hadea, a Center for Excellence in Training and Research, the International Institute for Justice and the Rule of Law, and the Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund, which is a public-private partnership to support local initiatives. Now, obviously, we all understand that every situation is different. but the principle is the same. To defeat terrorism, we have to act globally and locally. And we have to understand that we each have a responsibility to do everything that we can. UN Security Council 2178, adopted last year, requires member states to cooperate in stemming the flow of foreign fighters to terrorist organizations. So we have an obligation as well as a compelling interest to work together in ways that fully respect basic human rights, but to criminalize violent extremist activity, to secure borders, to share information, and to implement other measures to curb the recruitment of foreign terrorist fighters. And that's why today we are launching a new initiative to address the life cycle of radicalization to violence. This initiative will improve our ability to address every part of the terrorist cycle, from the start, when young people get grabbed by proselytizers who infect their minds, to the end, where governments and communities have to decide how do you best handle returning foreign fighters. The goal is to provide vulnerable governments with the tools and the knowledge that they need to prevent radicalization in the first place and to disengage individuals who have become radicalized so they might be reintegrated into their communities. As an example, in the state of Minnesota, which has a number of immigrants from Somalia, and recently some Somali Americans have been caught trying to leave the country with the intention of trying to join Daesh or al-Shabaab. Local officials refused to accept that. So they created mentoring programs. They offered help in securing jobs. They strengthened their community organizations. And these initiatives are being paid for not just by the government, but also by local corporations that have invested in this. And a member of the Minneapolis City Council who is of Somali descent said, "We are the solution. It has to come from us." So this forum was launched 4 years ago, and the United States has been privileged to serve as co-chair. At the end of today's meeting, we will step down, and the Netherlands is prepared to take our place, and we welcome their leadership and their commitment to this effort. I also note that early next year, Morocco will succeed Turkey as the corresponding co-chair, and I look forward to working with all of you in this forum as we make progress, and I'm convinced we can. You know, we all know we're engaged in a difficult fight, but this should not be a complicated choice. Our responsibility each day is to examine what more can we do in order to make a difference and to ensure that our citizens and every citizen makes the right choice themselves today and for decades to come.
Today, President Xi and I agreed to expand our cooperation between our two nations. I know that some in both countries and around the world question whether we can sustain the cooperation that we need and the world needs. I think we can draw encouragement from the ties that have long connected our peoples.